When the British come to your land, their first aim is to humiliate you.
Baga, it's not me that said it though. Listen to him.
To disgrace you into subjection. It was done in Sierra Leone, where a king was flogged in the presence of his subjects. It was done in South Africa, where it was called apartheid. It was done to Jaja of Opobo, and of course to Oba Ovonramwen Ogbaisi, king of the ancient empire of Benin. This is the tragic story of Oba Ovonramwen Ogbaisi. This is the story of the invasion of Benin Empire. Benin is the only Nigerian kingdom with the longest interaction with Europeans, but then that doesn't mean they had a cordial relationship. After what was done to Jaja of Opobo, the Beninese feared that they would be next, and so they became hostile to the white people. It was no longer business as usual, and the British responded by invading the land. But they disguised it and made it look like the invasion was a response to what they called the Benin Massacre. This is what happened. Since the Beninese could no longer trust the British, they closed trade with them and banned them from entering their land. This irritated the British, especially a particular colonial officer whose name was James Phillips. He decided, in the usual arrogance of the white man, to visit the Oba of Benin without invitation. Phillips was the acting consul general at the time. He sent a letter to Oba Ovonramwen saying he would visit him to discuss the opening of trade and to allow white men to enter Benin. So in January 1897, Phillips began traveling down to Benin, along with 6 other officers of the Niger Coast Protectorate, whose names are provided in the description of this video. These men carried boxes with them, and what was in those boxes were firearms. Oba Ovonramwen sent a messenger to Phillips saying that he won't be able to receive him at this time because he was in the middle of the Agwe festival. During this festival, the king is forbidden from setting eyes on non-Beninese, and foreigners are not permitted to enter into the land. The Agwe festival ceremonies was a month-long period of abstinence and spiritual purification. The Oba added that he will be able to attend to Phillips after this festival as long as Phillips came alone without any other white man. But Phillips said no and kept on going into Benin anyway. This made the Oba a little apprehensive. If Phillips meant well, why couldn't he just wait? And why couldn't he come alone as they have been doing in the past? 2 Benin officers, Ologbosere and Iyashere, were convinced that Phillips was leading an invasion, and they couldn't just sit by and watch this happen. They didn't want to suffer the fate of Jaja of Opobo and Nana of Ishekiri. On 4 more occasions, messengers were sent to warn Phillips that was not a good time to visit the land. But the guy was set in his ways and kept on going anyway. Was he being arrogant or just plain stupid? Even the people in his entourage warned him to obey the Oba, but the guy remained stubborn. And it is important to note that this trip wasn't even approved by Phillips' superiors. Then the unexpected happened. Phillips and his men were ambushed by Benin warriors. They were all killed except 2 officers who escaped with wounds. This was what the British press tagged the Benin Massacre. They made it look like the Oba of Benin had ordered the killing of peaceful British emissaries. There was no mention of the fact that the invasion of Benin was already a planned event. In February 1897, the British retaliated. They invaded the city of Benin and sacked it. Thousands of civilians were murdered. Hundreds of villages were burnt down. It may interest you to know that Hausa and Yoruba soldiers were used to conquer the Beninese, but that's a whole story on its own, a story for another day. Oba Ovonramwen had to run into the bush. He became a fugitive, a refugee in the land where he was king. 2 days after this invasion, on February 20, 1897, the British started a calculated, systematic destruction of the legacy of the Benin Empire. This was when the artwork of the Beninese were looted. Another story for another day. After nearly 6 months of hiding in a bush, Oba Ovonramwen eventually tired of running and he surrendered himself to the British. Even in defeat, Oba Ovonramwen presented himself in a procession consisting of drummers, 20 wives, 10 chiefs, and 800 followers, and he was richly dressed in coral beads with a crown on his head. The Beninese are a proud people. Ovonramwen begged to surrender in private, but the British said no. The mighty king of the Beninese was derobed in public, his crown was removed, and he was made to bow to the white man in the presence of his subjects. The people shed tears. This part of their history still haunts them to today. Some noblemen of the empire even committed suicide after this sight. A particular chief called Oba Yuwana later killed himself by slitting his own throat. When Ovonramwen was convinced that he was going to be exiled, he fled into the bush again. A particular chief called Ojumo gave out his hideout after the British threatened to kill him and his family. Some historians claim that he wasn't threatened but bribed instead. Ovonramwen was captured a second time. He tried to bribe his way into liberty by offering to show the white men where he had kept his 20 ponchos of palm oil and 500 ivory tusks. These were treasures, but alas, the British had already found out where it was kept. Oba Ovonramwen became dejected. That was his last hope and it was now gone. He was tried on several occasions and shipped out of his own land. While he was being shipped, Oba Ovonramwen, a king of an empire, cried out for help like a peasant, but he was further disgraced by having his mouth tied. Ovonramwen was deported to Calabar, where he lived the rest of his life as a commoner. He died in 1914, the year of Nigeria's amalgamation. That was how the great empire of Benin was ended, and then it was absorbed into the colony of Nigeria. Olarotomi wrote a play about this. He presented the history just as it happened, including the part when the king was made to remove his crown. The play was titled Ovonramwen Ogbaisi, but the Beninese frowned at the play. They rejected it because it hurt their pride, and so they commissioned another playwright to write a play to their taste. This playwright was Ahmed Yerima, and he did the good job of presenting them with an edited version of the history. Thank you for watching. Washiri.
Tayo Bello is on TikTok and He is very, very versatile with informations like this, with histories. I'm beginning to hear that history is no longer taught in schools. Why? Our history is so rich that if we forget where we came from, if we forget where we're from, we're going to keep on suffering. If you see what is happening today, you can relate it to what happened years and years and years ago. These things are not changing. I'm not trying to stir up any anger or anything, but it is important that we African people do not forget where we're from. It is important that we do not forget our source. I'm going to play this to my children. They are going to watch it. They are going to know their roots and the reason for some of the things that happened in the past. Please follow him. And please remember to follow my Facebook page, follow my TikTok, follow my YouTube, follow all my social media platforms. I found this extremely interesting and I thought, I actually took permission from Tayo and he said, I can share with you. Thank you for watching and just keep grinding.